So the idea of what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about lead generation, but the main thing that we're going to do is really be going through and talking about like how to set appointments and the process that you want to go through. So really what we're going to spend the time talking through and going through and hitting on is really that piece of it. Now, as part of doing that, and so I'm actually even tempted, you know what, actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to run to my office and grab my iPad, because typically I would just write on the board, but with nobody in here, it might be easier if I grab my iPad and then I can write to where you guys could actually see it. So give me 1 sec. If somebody else jumps on, let them know. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
All right, give me 1 second here. And in fact, while I get this on there, if you guys will just throw into the chat box, everybody, if you'll put your name in there so that I have a record of who was at the class, that would be great. And I gotta do one other thing here. Let's see. So give me 1 second and I'll get this set up to where we can get this taken care of, and you guys will be able to see a little bit better what I'm talking about by writing on my iPad. Okay. But I gotta get the code for the class, so there it is. Sorry, I should have thought to have this ready to go to do this. All right, almost there. All right, perfect. Should be good to go here now. All right, so here's where we're going to start then with this is what I want to do is give you guys a little bit of the background of me and what brought me into real estate, and also just the struggle. Really, probably that's the best way I should start this is when I decided to come into real estate. I came into real estate because I had an uncle that I had gone and talked to and asked him about getting my license and becoming a real estate agent. And at the time I was working at a bank. This was back in the mid 90s or early 90s. And I was working at a bank and I had asked my uncle, you know, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Like, how much money do you pay your agents that sit your model homes? So he had a couple of model homes. He had 4 agents that would sit these model homes. And at the time he said, I paid 2 of them. I paid over 60,000. The other 2 he had paid over 100,000. Well, at that time I was making somewhere around $40,000 a year. And so to me, 60 sounded great even. And so I went to real estate school. I got my license. As soon as I got my license, I called up my uncle and I said, okay, got my license. I'm ready to go. I want to come work for you sitting your model home. He said, well, I've already got those 4 agents that sit the model homes. And if I were to put you in one of the model homes, it takes away from their income, which they wouldn't be very happy about. So until one of those agents leaves, I don't really have a spot for you. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, well then what should I do? And so what happened then is my uncle told me to go and talk to this other broker. And he said, I don't know how good he is, but it seems like the agents that work for him tend to follow him as he moves from, company to company or whatever. He said, so they must do a pretty good job because the agents will follow him. So I went to that guy and I said, okay, I want to get my real estate, or I got my real estate license. What do I do? And as we went through and talked about it, there were a few things that he shared with me and told me that were good and they helped me get started into doing real estate, but I struggled. So kind of the short story on this is I struggled for about that first year and a half that I had my real estate license. Like I didn't do a lot of business. I basically replaced my income that I had at the bank. Well, remember, I came into it thinking I wanted to make $100,000 a year. And so I made maybe 40 and I was frustrated. And so part of the struggle and what happened though, is when I started, my manager had just said to me, you need to go knock on doors for 2 hours every day for the next 2 years. And he said, if you'll do that 2 hours every day for 2 years, then you won't have to worry. You'll have business. So I went and started doing that. Now, the other thing that happened was this. So let me start sharing some stuff on here to, oops, I got to quit sharing on the other computer here first. All right. And okay, now it should be good. Okay, so sorry, gotta make sure I get to the right spot here. All right, so you guys should be able to see this. So what happened then is I went and talked to him and he told me, go knock on doors for 2 hours. And essentially what happened is I went out and did that, but I wasn't really having the success that I wanted. And in fact, what had happened is he told me that if I wanted to make $100,000 back then, the average commission check that an agent was getting was $2,000. So if I was going to typically get $2,000 for a closing, then that meant I needed to sell 50 houses in a year to make $100,000. So I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. Well, the other thing that he had told me is that however many closings you want to have in a year is how many contacts you should be making on a daily basis. Now, I actually personally don't believe that is true. And part of why I say that is because I went out and was doing 50 contacts every single day. And yet at the end of a year, I had only had maybe 17 closings. So to me, I was kind of like, okay, something's not really quite working right with that. So you'll hear that though. You're going to hear people tell you 50 closings every single, or excuse me, 50 contacts would equate to 50 closings, or they'll tell you 30 contacts every day, 30 closings, 10 contacts a day, 10 closings, 100 contacts a day, 100 closings. But like I said, I found that it doesn't necessarily play out exactly that way. And we'll talk about why that is today. So, but what happened then is about a year and a half after I had gotten my real estate license. So I had been licensed about a year and a half. I went to a training where I met this guy that was the trainer at this training, which I actually almost didn't even go to this training. It's interesting as I think back on it, is I almost didn't go because I was in a position where I was making just enough money. And so the thought of at that time to go to this guy's training was going to be $500. And I was just like, I don't know that I could give up $500 out of my budget to go do this. But I had somebody else tell me, no, you need to go do this. So I did, which that guy then became somewhat of a mentor for me for a long, long time, for many, many years. And in fact, I still have contact with him today, although I'm not typically calling him for advice like I used to do. But what happened is I went to this training then, and in this training, he started talking about prospecting and income and all that kind of stuff. And I just raised my hand, which, so by the way, I learned at that particular training of like, if you are struggling or you want help, you want to be more successful, you have to be willing to ask questions that maybe even put you in a little bit of a vulnerable position. Because what happened is, because I was willing to be vulnerable and just say, like, I'm struggling with my real estate, I'm not making the income that I want to make, and here's, I don't know what to do. And so what happened then is he showed me this. So what I'm going to draw for you guys right now is what he shared with me. And this is what it was, is he drew this on the board. So my poorly drawn there, but which my handwriting's bad enough, but for whatever reason, you give me a stylus and an iPad, and for whatever reason, it even gets worse. So, but anyway, so what he did is this, is he said that your journey to success in real estate. And so now remember, we're talking about lead generation, but really what we're talking about for you guys is, how do you set more appointments? How do you make more money from real estate? And so what he told me was that what happens is, this process that we go through is basically this line right here is the learning curve. And so as you get your license and you get going with real estate, or even if you, once you had your license, if you're not getting the production you want, then there's a pretty good chance that what's happening with it is that you're stuck somewhere into one of these 4 categories. And typically, if you're not making the money in the business, you're usually in category 1 or 2 here. So this first category is what we would call the activities phase. And so he drew this on the board and he said to me, the activities phase is what happens with most agents when they get their real estate license. Most agents, as a new agent, they get their license, but actually, like I said, even though I'm saying this as new agents, this applies actually to people who have had their license for a long, long time. I watch this as well, meaning you can revert backwards into categories, and I see that happen. So what he said though is, and in fact, just to make sure you guys are not sleeping or watching some other show out there, I'm going to ask some questions to make sure you're there. So just feel free to unmute, and because and maybe I'll see if you type in the chat box on my iPad. I don't know. But when you went to real estate school, did they teach you how to sell real estate?
No.
Yeah. What did they teach you, Britt?
I feel like just the busy work of it, like not to how to actually go out and sell real estate.
Hey, good.
Just like the guts of, not things that actually help you when you're out there needing to sell a home, or what to say and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, rules and regulations. That's what you learn.
Yeah.
Basically,
yeah, for me it felt just like contracts. They just like
the busy work.
that's right.
It taught you how to not get in trouble.
Good.
Yes.
That's right. So here's the 2 things of how I always say it. The 2 things they taught you in real estate school is how to pass the test, is basically here's how you're going to pass the test. And then number 2 is how to stay out of jail. So basically, keep your license and how to pass the test. So as a result of that, that's why this activities phase is so crucial, that you understand this piece of it, because what happens is we get our real estate license. Nobody has taught us really how to prospect. Nobody has taught us where to prospect. Nobody's taught us what to say. Nobody's taught us how to go get a transaction. They barely taught you how to fill out a contract. And I don't even know that I would say they taught you how to fill out the contract. They taught you a little bit about it. So because of that, what happens is we end up in this activities phase. In the activities phase is where what happens is we got our license, and now we're like, okay, I need to learn how to fill out the contract. And so we then are going to feel like I can't go do anything until I learn that. Or we think I need to learn how to use the MLS. I got to find how to get properties. How do I access a home? How do I get in? What do I do when I'm showing the house? What do I say? How do I unlock the door? How do you make an appointment? What do you say? Like all of those things are things that we feel like we need to learn first. So probably the way that I would sum up this activities phase of things is during the activities phase is when we're getting ready to get ready so that when we're ready, we'll actually be ready. And that's how I would define this activities phase here is that phase is like, I'm getting ready to get ready so that I can start to work, but I don't really know what I need to do. And then you add to that, that you guys are 1099, you're independent contractors, you're not employees. So because of that, even what ends up happening is you come here and it's not like somebody says to you, if you don't show up one day, it's not like somebody's calling you on the phone and saying, hey, well, you weren't here today, what's going on? Like if you were working at a restaurant or some other place and you just didn't show up, like within a few hours, somebody would be calling you. Well, that doesn't necessarily happen here because you're an independent contractor. So what happens is the activities phase is we don't go do anything because we're not prepared, we don't feel ready, we don't know what to do. Okay, so that's the activities phase here. Okay, the next phase is what we would call the contacts phase. And again, like I said, I apologize for how poor my handwriting's bad enough as it is, but for whatever reason, it's worse on an iPad. So the contacts phase is what happened with me. So I got my license, I went to my manager and I said, okay, tell me what to do. He said, go knock on doors 2 hours every day for the next 2 years, which by the way, I mentioned to you that I was doing 50 contacts a day. You cannot do 50 contacts typically in 2 hours. That was taking me more like 4 or 5 hours to get on a daily basis. But I started it with just go knock on doors every day for 2 hours. So I did. And I would just knock on doors and I would just say to people, hi, my name's Russ and we got this house for sale. And I'll talk more about what to say. But I really wasn't getting anywhere with that, but I was making my 50 contacts every single day. Now, here's the next question for you. If you look at this line here, this learning curve, what do you notice during the activities phase about that line?
It doesn't move. It doesn't move. There's no up or down.
It's pretty low.
Yeah, it's flat, right? It's
Yeah.
flat. Which, what happens in the medical world if there's a flat line?
You're dead.
Yeah, you're dead, right? So kind of think of the same thing with that in that activity space. But now you notice though, when we go over to the contacts phase, which my line was not drawn very well, this line really probably should come more like this than the squiggly like it was. But so on the contacts phase, what you'll notice is towards the end of that, there does start to be some liftoff. Well, that's basically what happened with me. And that's what this guy said to me is he said, here's the problem, because I was frustrated. I was saying to him, like I came into this business because I wanted to make money. I didn't come into this business because I just wanted to replace my income. And so my assumption is, my guess is that's the same with you guys, is if you came into real estate just to replace an income that you already had, it may have been easier to just stay with what you had than to do what we have to do in real estate. And in fact, I was talking with another agent this morning about that, of just saying, it's interesting of how what real estate looks like to the public versus what it's really like. Meaning, again, the whole thing that made me decide to do real estate was my wife and I were looking at houses. We had an agent showing us and I started running the numbers and I was like, she's going to get paid that much money for just basically opening a door for me. And I was like, I'm in. Like, how do I do that? Then what happens is you get your license and you find out that, yeah, it's not, once you get a client who's, ready, willing, and able to do it, it really is somewhat quote unquote simple. Like, doesn't necessarily mean it's easy, it's simple, but you find out really fast the hardest part about this job is getting people to then work with, right? So what happens then is I go to this meeting and I tell him that. And so what he says to me is, he said, here's the problem. You're doing 50 contacts a day, but the problem is you're stuck in the contacts phase. Now, I didn't understand fully what he meant by that. But what he did is he then told me this next piece. So, and I'll come back to that. So in fact, let me see if I can somewhat erase. There we go. make this line a little bit better this way. I don't know, poor, I apologize. This whole line should be moved further over. So, let me oops, not that one. All right, that's still not doing a very good job. I should have just stuck with writing on the board. You guys probably would have appreciated it better. But anyway, so he said, here's the thing. The next phase of this whole process is this one, which is called, I'm going to abbreviate it, but that should be appointments. So I'm just putting APPTS, appointments. So I always abbreviate that for appointments. The next phase of this in this journey to success in real estate is what's called the appointments phase. Now, when you look at this line here, again, what you should notice is the steepest part of this line is during that appointments phase. And what he said is this. What he said to me is, you're here in this contacts phase, and what's happening is you're getting the results of being in the contacts phase. And I said, okay, what do you mean? And he's pointed to this and said, notice that there's a little bit of lift off, but it doesn't go very far. And I said, yeah. And he said, that's what's going on with your career. You're in the contacts phase. You're out making 50 contacts a day. And then he said this, and this is the key piece of this. Make sure you hear this. The next thing he said to me was, what if I told you that you could prospect half as much, so meaning you do half as many contacts, but double your income? And I was like, okay. I want to do that. Tell me how to do it. Like, one of the things about me is I'm like, if I can figure out what the pattern is or the recipe is, what is it? I'll follow it. Like, just tell me what I need to do and I will go and do it. So I said, okay, great. Yeah. How could I prospect? Because again, I was spending 4 to 5 hours prospecting, not making very much money. He says to me, what if I told you you could prospect half as much, but double your income? I'm in. So he said, okay, what you need to do then is you got to get out of this contacts phase and get over here into this appointments phase. And I said, okay, I'm willing to do that. How do I do it? What does that look like? And he said, here's the problem. So the first thing we're going to talk about for today's class is, and in fact, let me see if I can bounce back and forth between 2 pages here, is the first thing is focus. So in your prospecting, the first important thing is that your focus has to be on setting appointments. So again, I'm just going to abbreviate here, appointments. Your first objective is you've got to be focused on setting appointments. And I said, okay. And basically what he told me at that point is he said, right now, your focus is on making contacts. It is not on setting appointments. And I didn't know how he knew that, but at looking back on it, he was right. That is what was happening. So I said, okay, so how do I then get from here on quit focusing on contacts to appointments? And so here's what he told me that you need to do. Now, you may or may not be prepared or ready to do this yet in your career. But what I'm telling you is, if you want to get to where you're making over $100,000 a year and really probably actually using this same process now, probably talking $250 a year, you got to at some point do this. Okay. And so here's what he said to me is, you got to quit focusing on contacts, start focusing on appointments. I said, great. How do I do that? And he said, all right, here's what you're going to do. Tomorrow morning, when you go to work, you are going to work until you set an appointment. And I was like, okay. So he said, okay. So what that means is tomorrow morning, you're going to get up, you're going to go to the office. You are not going to go home until you set an appointment. And I said, okay. Now I was pretty young still, as far as like, meaning like when I started in real estate, I think I was 25, if I remember right, or just 26. I may have just turned 26, but so I was 25, 26 years old. I think he could tell I didn't have a lot of business maturity. I don't know what you would want to call it, but what he said to me was, okay, so tomorrow morning, you're gonna go to work. You're not going home till you set an appointment. I said, yes. He says, okay, forgive me, but I just really want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. And I said, okay. And he said, you're gonna go home tonight and you're gonna tell your wife, tomorrow, I will not come home from work until I set an appointment. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, you mean like I really can't go home until I set an appointment? And he said, yeah, like for real, don't go home until you set an appointment. Well, at that point, I was like, well, I don't know if I want to commit to that. Now, here's why. I was going out knocking on doors every day. So the process looked like this. I would get to the office somewhere around 9 o'clock every day. I would go into a conference room with a lady by the name of Shirley. She and I would go into a conference room and we would do some role play, where we would role play and practice our door knocking and all that, what we were going to say and how we were going to do it. And we would practice from about 9:15 till about 9:45. So we'd spend about 30 minutes practicing. Then we would go either jump in my car or her car. We would drive out to the neighborhood we were going to knock on doors. We would knock on doors until we got 25 contacts. Once we had 25 contacts, then what would happen is we'd go back to the office. We'd go our separate ways for lunch. We would meet back at the office at about 2 o'clock and we would get on the phone and we would start prospecting again until we hit the other 25 contacts. Well, what was usually happening is I would do the 25 out on doors. I would do 25 in the afternoon on the phone. And at the end of the day, I very rarely had an appointment. Like I wish I had all my contacts and everything still that I could share with you exactly what that was looking like. But I very rarely had an appointment. And so now this guy's asking me to move from here, the contacts phase, to the appointments phase. And he's saying, now, don't go home tomorrow till you set an appointment. So I was a little like, oh, I don't know if I want to commit to doing that. Now, this whole training that I had gone to with him was all about commitment. In fact, this guy has written a book. I don't know that you'll be able to find it anywhere. I have a copy, but it's called The Power of Commitment. Everything he trained about was the power that comes to you from making a commitment. And so what he was saying to me is when you will commit, or another way that we set it up here was if you'll focus on setting appointments. But he said, if you'll commit to setting appointments, then what's going to happen is you are actually going to see that in half of the time of your prospecting, you will set appointments, which will therefore end up doubling your income. So, okay. So I say, finally, I go, okay, I'll do it. Because he finally said to me, just commit to do it for a week. If you'll just do it for 1 week. I said, okay, I'll do it. So I committed to the next day that I was going to not go home until I set an appointment. So I went home that night. I go to my wife and I tell her, okay, I went to this seminar. It was awesome. I made a commitment that tomorrow I will not come home from work until I have set an appointment. And I remember my wife saying to me, okay, well then you better get to work early because we have to do blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it was, something in the evening. I just remember her saying, you got to be home by 5. So you better go get an appointment before 5 o'clock because you got to be home at 5. Okay. Now, remember I said I would show up to the office around 9. So let me ask you guys another question. In the event that I said that to you, you cannot go home from work tomorrow until you set an appointment, what time would you start work tomorrow?
7.
As early as I can.
Okay, good. Yeah. Notice that we're going to start earlier, right? So I always wait for somebody to just say, well, if that was the case, I just won't go to work. And then I don't have to worry about setting an appointment, right? All right. So for me, what you guys said is right on, is I was like, okay, if I got to do this and I got to set an appointment, I got to get to work early. So before I was showing up at 9 o'clock. Well, that next day, if I remember right, I was at the office before 7:30. I know for sure it was not after 7:30. I was at the office by 7:30 in the morning. Now, back then, the way that we worked it as far as getting like phone numbers for sale by owners was just out of the newspaper. You would just stop at one of the gas stations on the way, buy a newspaper, open it up, and you'd go to the want ads or whatever classifieds, and you would find the people who were doing for sale by owner. So I had done that. I took the paper to the office. I also then jumped on the computer. I printed off all the expired listings that were in the area that I was working. And I sat down at what we had was called the Coles directory, which that still exists online. But back then it was this thick book that was about this thick that had everybody's phone number in the book, but it was based on, rather than a phone book being in alphabetical order, it was in street address order. So you'd sit down with the expired listings, go to that book, and you'd go to the street that the house was on, and then you would find the house number and go over and you could get the phone number. So I did all of that. 8 o'clock, I'm ready to go. I'm on the phone. I start calling. Now, the other thing, now keep in mind, I've been in the business about a year and a half at that point. And so I had a number of leads. And back then for me, what that meant is I had written on like sticky notes or stuff, names and phone numbers, and then had them all over my desk. Like there really wasn't much organization to it, because at that point I didn't have in fact, I'm trying to remember if I don't think I had a computer at the office. I think I had I know I had one at home, but I don't think I had a program to keep track of them or anything like that. So I just had all these sticky notes. Well, so at 8 o'clock in the morning, I got to start prospecting, and the reason I got there early is because legally, and this just always just a good reminder for you guys, that technically, legally, if not technically, legally, we can't make outgoing, solicitation calls until 8 a.m. So I was all ready to go. So at 8 a.m., I'm on the phone calling. So at 8 o'clock, I go through and I call the for sale by owners. I called the expireds. And at that point, guys, I was not very good at getting an appointment with it for sale by owner and expired. I would do a lot better on it today, but back then I wasn't very good. So I called through all those. I got no appointments. So the next thing that I did was, all right, I'm going to call through my leads then. Because to me, I was like, that's going to be my best source of getting an appointment. Now, remember, I couldn't go home until I got an appointment. But the flip side of that was, the other part of the agreement was, once I got an appointment, that I had to go home. Like, do whatever you need to do at the office, busy work, but don't just hang out at the office to hang out. He was like, go to work, do your job, then go home. Okay. So I go and I start calling now through my leads. And I come across one of the leads that is like, yeah, we're ready to get going on that. Great. And I set an appointment with them. Now, after I set the appointment, now keep in mind this, I started phone calling at 8. Shirley and I would go in and role play it about 9:15. Well, by 9:15, I had set an appointment. So within an hour and 15 minutes, I had set my appointment. So I go into the conference room with Shirley now, and Shirley did not go to this training the day before that I had been to, and actually it had been 2 days before, but the 2 days, the Monday, Tuesday, this was a Wednesday. So we go walking into the conference room. Shirley says, let's role play. So I do my role play. We get done with the role play, and she says, all right, let's meet out at my car at 9:45. And I said, oh yeah, sorry, Shirley, I'm not going today. Now, Shirley was a great accountability partner. Like, she would not let me get away with not prospecting. And so she was like, no, you're going out door knocking. And I said, no, I can't, because I had an agreement with this training I went to that once I set an appointment, that I don't have to then go do any more prospecting. In fact, I have to go home as soon as I get everything done. And Shirley was great. Like I said, she said, you know what, that is not a good idea. It's not going to work out for you. You need to go knock on doors. And I said, nope, I just have this agreement that once I set an appointment that I'm not going. So for the next week, if I've set my appointment, I'm not going to go door knocking with you. And she was like, that's just not going to work. And I said, well, it's just a week, Shirley, give me a week, pretend I'm on vacation, whatever, and then we'll see what happens. Well, so I got the appointment. I did whatever busy work. I go driving into my house at noon, walk in the door, and my wife says, what are you doing? Are you here for lunch? And I said, no, I'm done for the day. And she was like, oh, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. Now, because keep in mind, I was doing 50 contacts every day and getting really nowhere. And all of a sudden now, I've gone to work, I've prospected for an hour and a half, I've done my role play, I did whatever other busy work stuff I needed to do. And I go showing up at home at noon and my wife's like, yeah, I don't think this is a good idea. And I just said, well, it's a week. Let's see what happens. So the next day, get up again. I'm there at the office by 7:30. I get the expireds. I get the for sale by owners. I call through them. And I don't remember exactly where that next appointment came from. But again, before 10 o'clock, I had set an appointment. So I told Shirley again, I'm not going out door knocking again. And again, she told me this is not a good idea. Now, here's the interesting thing. At the end of that week, I had set then 5 appointments. So working 5 days for that week, I set 5 appointments. I had never once in my real estate career, which again, it was short, it was 18 months at that point, but in a year and a half, I had never set 5 appointments in a week. In fact, I would bet I probably never set more than 2 in a week. So what changed? What changed was this. First thing that changed is my focus. I went from focusing on making contacts to making appointments. So now let's go to the next step of this. So here's what happened. So let me show you what this looked like. And in fact, is somebody, will one of you guys on Zoom, and just in case, I don't know who else maybe has joined us. Looks like we got a few, but I don't have anybody in person in the room here. So you guys are on Zoom or on the hot seat, like you have to participate or else for all I know, I'm just standing here talking. So who will role play with me? Who will be my, I'll be the agent. You get to be the seller or buyer or whatever. You're going to be the person I contact.
I'll do it.
All right. Is that Scott?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So, so first what we're going to do is I'm first going to show you guys what I was doing at first. Before, when my focus was on contacts, this is what it looked like. So we'll actually do it since you're not here in person. Let's do it as if we're over the phone, which, because I mean, you can see me, I can't see you, but so that's fine. But let's just do as if I'm calling you on the phone. So, okay, so ring, ring.
Hello,
Hi, I'm looking for Scott.
this is.
Scott, this is Russ. I'm with Century 21. We just listed your neighbor's home over on Birch and Pine. It's got 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. It's listed for $499,900. And I was just calling to see who you know that would want to move into the area.
I don't know anybody really.
Oh, you don't know? Okay. So, well, have you thought about selling your house at all?
No, I rent.
Oh, you rent? Okay. Well, have you ever thought about buying a house?
Always.
Always? All right. Don't be so easy.
No, this is all actual. This is actual.
Oh, you're real. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've thought about buying. So what has held you back from buying then?
Job history for the loan.
Oh, okay. So just you don't have enough. Okay. Well, do you know anybody else thinking about buying or selling?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for your time. Talk to you later.
Yeah, no problem.
So now, remember, guys, what we're talking about here is the way I was approaching it when I was focused back here on in the contacts phase. That's how I was focused. Is all I cared about is that when I knocked on somebody's door or I called them on the phone, is that I got the chance to talk to them like I just did with Scott. And like I say, truthfully, I probably would have taken that a little bit farther based on what he was saying. But
I feel like I would have taken it further as well. As an agent, I would have been more like, well, maybe we should talk about like maybe other options for financing. Let me see what I could do for you. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Even as I was saying it to you, I was thinking, man, I just opened up so many doors for him to like bring more conversation on. So
Yeah.
For sure. So, but here's the thing, like I say, most of the contacts though were not that. Most of the contacts were, we listed your neighbor's home. Who do you know? They say, I don't know anybody. Well, have you thought about selling your house? No. Okay. Well, do you know anybody else in the neighborhood that's thinking about selling? No. Okay. Well, here's my card. If you have any questions, give me a call back. Like that's typically what was happening in the contacts phase. Now, when you go though to the appointments phase, now remember, in that appointments phase, here was the key thing. And this is where the magic of this comes into play, is it did not matter how many contacts. See, when I was focused on contacts, of making a certain number of contacts, what would happen is I would go out every day trying to get to 50 as fast as I could. Now, have any of you guys on here ever done 50 contacts in a day?
No.
No.
Okay, so here's what I will tell you. It's a bit overwhelming because even like it harder today than it was back then. Back then when I did it, like more people would answer their phone. Not everybody had caller ID at that point. So when you were calling, they didn't know who was calling versus today. Like think about how many times your phone rings today and you look at it and you don't recognize the number, you just don't answer. Like that's just the way it is today, right? So I get it that it's a little bit more difficult today, but that really reinforces what I'm saying though, is if you know, hey, I got to do this until I get to 50 contacts. For me, like it was the faster I could get the people off the phone, the faster I could get the next contact, the faster I could get the next one, the next one, the next one, and then be done for the day. But now all of a sudden he's saying, okay, who cares how many contacts you make? What matters is the number of appointments you get. So what I did then is the next day, as I mentioned to you, my focus now, so let me switch back to this. My focus was now on setting appointments. Is I got to go set an appointment. So then what happens is it totally changes the way you're going to approach people, which leads to then the second piece that we want to talk about today. So the second thing we want to talk about is when you're prospecting. Now I'm going to give you, what I'm giving you today, remember I said, excuse me, is the formula to setting appointments. And the first thing that has to happen is you got to have that focus. I'm focused on getting an appointment. The second thing that's going to happen then is you have to create a connection, or you could say it as some rapport with the people that you are prospecting. Okay, so now I wasn't worried about that piece of it when I'm in the contacts phase, because all I cared about was getting the contact. And for me, a lot of times somebody will ask me, what's the definition of a contact? I will tell you my definition of a contact, and you can have your own, and other people probably have their own. But for me, I defined a contact is if I said my name, that I was with Century 21, and that, you know, we had a house for sale, or have you thought about, like, if I could just get those pieces out. Here's my name, I'm with Century 21. Have you thought about buying or selling? If I could get that, that was good enough. There's a contact. And in fact, even if for me, if I knocked on somebody's door and I said, hi, my name's Russ, I'm with Century 21, and somebody said, we're not interested, and slammed the door, I would have been contact, there's one. So kind of recognize that's how I define a contact. But now all of a sudden, when it's no, you got to set an appointment, well, that's going to totally change the way that you're going to approach things. So your approach to talking to them changes when your focus changes. Okay. So first thing I want to make sure you guys learn from this class is every time you are prospecting, your focus has to be, is my objective, my primary objective. Now we'll talk on Tuesday in the second part of this class. We'll talk about your secondary objective. But your primary objective every time you knock on a door is to set an appointment. Okay. Now, the way that we're going to do that is a 3-step process. And so the second piece, or the first of that 3-step process, is you've got to have a connection and some rapport. Well, how do you get the connection and rapport? Well, the way you're going to do that is you're going to ask a question. Then after you've asked a question, you have to then repeat and affirm what they said. Okay, so you're going to first ask them a question. Once they respond, then the way that you're going to get this connection and rapport with people is you have to repeat back what they said. Now, you don't have to repeat everything they said, but repeat back the last 3 to 5 words that they've said, or summarize the concept. If they said a lot, summarize back to them that you heard what they said, and then you're going to affirm it. And affirm it means you're going to go, that's great. That's awesome. Wow, that's exciting. Fantastic. Oh, really? That's very interesting. That's what we mean is you're going to repeat back what they say and then affirm it. If they said something negative, then you're going to reaffirm it with a negative. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Or that's unfortunate. Or you may even go, interesting, really fascinating. Something like that is what we're going to do. Now, here's why. Under this connection and rapport piece, if you want to learn more and see more on this, there is a great video. You can get it off YouTube that was done by Tony Robbins. Now, don't everybody, since you guys are all on Zoom, please don't go watch it like right now while we're doing class. Do it later. But there's a great video on there about connection and rapport that Tony Robbins has done, where in that video, what he says is this: people like people who are like them or who they want to be. So I'll say it again. People like people who are like them or who they want to be. And so what we want to do, and then in that video, he'll talk more about mirroring and matching and stuff like that. It's a great video to watch, but basically the concept of it is people like people who are like them. So if when somebody tells you something, you repeat back to them basically what they said, it lets them know you heard what they said. And then by affirming it of being like, that's great, that's fantastic, yeah, that's exciting. What that's going to do is have them then feel like you're validating them. People want to be validated. And when you validate them, there's going to be now this connection and rapport that gets built. Okay. So Scott, let's do, if you're good, let's do it. Let's do the role play again. But this time I'm going to add in the asking the questions and the repeating and affirming. Okay. So we're actually going to do it twice. I'm going to show you guys the difference between what it feels like when you repeat and affirm versus when you don't. Okay, so let's do it first, Scott, where I'm going to repeat and affirm. Then we're going to do that. We'll rewind, start over, do the exact same conversation, but I'm not going to repeat and affirm. And then you tell me the difference of what that feels like. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So ring.
Hello.
Hey, I'm looking for Scott.
This is
Scott. This is Russ Orchard with Century 21. How you doing?
good. And yourself?
Great. Hey, the reason for my call was we just listed your neighbor's home over on Birch and Pine. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, listed for $499. And I was just calling to see who you know that might want to move into the area.
I don't really know anybody. I'm new here.
Oh, you're new in the area?
Yep.
Really? Oh, that's great. Well, so I appreciate you taking the time thinking about it. So it sounds like you just barely moved here. Where did you move from?
Massachusetts.
From Massachusetts to here?
Yep.
Wow, that's great. What brought you here?
New life.
A new life? Okay,
Yep,
cool.
yep.
That sounds interesting. I might want to hear more about that sometime. So, well, how did you choose this area?
I knew a person that actually is in real estate. He does development, and he paid for my real estate license so that I could come out here and do it.
Oh, so you knew somebody that already lived out here, and they basically got you a job and ready to get going.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. Good for you. Well, God, let me ask you, like, if you ever were to move, where would you go next?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
I'm in the place I want to be.
Okay, so just meaning that where you're living is where you want to be, or would you want to live in a different house?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good point. Definitely a different house.
So a different house.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like the area though.
What's that? You like the area?
Yeah, the area is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is a fantastic area. So, well, let me ask you, have you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody about what's going on in the market today?
I have not.
You haven't? Okay. Well, what we should do is sit down, spend, 15, 20 minutes. I'll just walk you through what's going on in the market. And then from there, what we could do is talk about, what you're wanting to accomplish. And then, God, we could just make a plan of making that happen. So would afternoon or an evening be better for you?
Afternoon would be good.
Afternoon would be
My
good.
God, you just talked me into making an appointment.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. So, okay, now, so that's using the connection, or excuse me, the repeat and affirm. Now,
Yep.
so let's rewind though. I'm going to do basically the exact same thing. And I say basically because it's not going to be the same, but I'm going to do basically the same thing, but I'm not going to repeat and affirm. And then let's see how you respond. Okay. So ring.
Hello.
Hi, I'm looking for Scott.
This is.
Scott, this is Russ with Century 21. We just listed your neighbor's home over on Birch and Pine. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, listed for $599,999. And I was calling to see who you know that would want to move into the area.
I don't really know anybody here. I'm pretty new.
Okay, so how long have you lived here?
Just over a year.
Where'd you move from?
Massachusetts.
How'd you end up here?
Knew some people that made the opportunity possible.
What were you doing on Friday night at 8 p.m.? I'm just kidding. But
it,
doesn't it feel more like an interrogation? when
it did a little bit. Yeah, definitely. I wasn't as comfortable in the conversation.
Yeah. So notice that is that what ends up happening is without the repeat and affirm, it feels like this feels weird or whatever. And actually, like, just stop and think about when you've gotten telemarketer calls. And in fact, to some extent, I would invite you guys to, as you start getting phone calls from numbers you don't recognize, start answering them. And answer it from the standpoint of, do you use it as a way of figuring out what not to do. And occasionally you'll get a what to do from it. But for the most part, you're going to figure out this is what you should not do. Because what you'll notice is that's how people do it, is they are reading a script and they're not actually listening to what you say. They don't repeat and affirm back to you. They're just boop, 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 boop. And which there's no connection or rapport built. Okay. So now notice, so what I did is I would ask a question. So in fact, let's do it this way. I would ask a question, then I would come down here and repeat and affirm. Once I repeated and affirmed, I would go back and ask another question. And then I would go back and repeat and affirm. So all I was doing is every single time repeating back what he said, telling him it's great, asking the next question, repeating back what he said. Like, once people know you're listening to them, they're more willing to then talk to you. Okay. All right. Then the next piece of this. So in fact, let me go to a new page here. So number 3 then. And I did this. Oh, actually, I forgot one thing. Let me go back. The other thing that, and I actually didn't do this, I should have done it. I thought about doing it, but I didn't because we hadn't talked about it yet. The other thing as part of connection and rapport is going to be empathy. Okay, the next piece of this, of the secret of getting the connection and rapport, is using empathy. And what that is basically saying, if I were you, I would feel the same way too. Or if I were you, I would do the same thing too. So empathy is, if I were you, I would do that too. If I were you, I would feel that way too. And again, this is tied to people like people who are like them. And they want that recognition, or they want to be right. And you telling them they're right in what they're doing is good. So what we want to do is we want to add those pieces when it applies. So, and I'm trying to remember what you said, Scott. There was something Scott said that I almost did, but then I thought, well, I'm going to hold off and I'll talk about it first. But that I wanted to say, hey, if I were you, I would feel that way too. And it might have been when you just said, I love the area or something, is, hey, I said, you're right, it is a fantastic area. But
yeah, I was going to say you did kind of, but you did it not in those exact words.
Right.
And I think it was when I said, I love the area. And you did say something like, yeah, I can totally understand that. So it was pretty similar. So.
Yep. Yeah. So just basically any time that it will make sense, you want to throw that out to people of, hey, if I were you, I would be doing that too. Like, so for example, let's just change up the scenario a little bit. Let's say that Scott was like an internet lead and I had called him up and I had said, hey, I noticed you were on my website looking at properties, and are you considering making a move or something? And he said, no, I was just kind of bored. And, or maybe he says, I was just thinking maybe in a couple of years I would buy a house. And so I just thought I would jump online and see what was out there. That would be another scenario where I could go, hey, totally makes sense. If I were you, I would be doing that same thing too. And in fact, I usually even will add to that of, in fact, you're actually really smart that you're doing that. Most people aren't that smart to start looking that far ahead. So like, if you validate them by, hey, you're actually doing exactly what a smart buyer would be doing, you're validating them, and people like being right. So by you telling them you're doing a good thing is just another way of this empathy piece of just kind of being like, hey, if I were you, I would be doing the exact same thing. Okay. Now, what if though you don't really agree with what they're doing? Like sometimes people will go, that kind of seems like shady if you're saying, well, hey, if I were you, I would do that too. What if you really wouldn't do that? So what are your thoughts on that?
I would say just throw in like also to consider, so you're not making them feel bad, but you're kind of giving them another perspective.
Okay, good. I like that, Derek. Thanks. So yeah, but here's the key thing too, is as long as you say, if I were you, then when you say I would be doing that too, you're actually not being wrong. If you were them, if you had all of their life experience, if you had been through what they have been through, if you knew what they knew, you would be doing exactly what they're doing. So you're not lying by saying, if I were you, I would be doing that same thing too, because if you were them, that is. And then I like what you said, Derek, because you may want to say, you know, hey, if I were you, I would be doing the other thing, that exact same thing, but, or say, and usually don't want to say but, because but kind of nullifies everything you said before. And the other thing I would do is consider talking to a lender and finding how much I could qualify for or whatever. So by adding that, hey, if I were you, I would be doing that too. And I would just also add this piece to it. So I love that. Good. All right. So next, number 3. So the third part of this, number 3 is we have to then create value. Or the other way I like to say it, we have to make people curious. Oops. Okay, we have to create value, or you can think of it as we have to make them curious. Now, another great book. So on Tuesday, I gave you guys a couple of books that I would recommend reading. I'm going to give you another one that I recommend as well. In fact, I actually was even thinking yesterday, I need to go back and review and go through some of my highlights and stuff that I put in this book, because there's some good information in there. But the name of the book is The Secrets of Question-Based Selling. So The Secrets of Question-Based Selling. The author is Thomas Freeze, but it's Freeze with an S, no Z. Okay. So Thomas Freeze, The Secrets of Question-Based Selling. In that book, he calls it making people curious. I always taught it as you got to create value, and you'll hear it typically throughout the company as you got to create value. But you can also think of it as you got to make people curious, and that's how he said it. So let me give you the example that he uses in the book. In the book where he's talking about making people curious. See, I get asked a lot of times when I'm prospecting, should I leave voicemails or should I not leave a voicemail? And the answer to that is it really kind of depends. And so what I mean by that is if you leave a voicemail the way most people leave a voicemail, you shouldn't leave a voicemail. You're better off not leaving a voicemail. But if you are going to leave a voicemail, your voicemail better make them curious or they're not calling you back. Okay. So let me show you what I mean. So in the book, he was talking about this, and this happened to be a real estate agent. The book is just sales in general, not real estate sales. But this particular section, he was talking about a realtor. And this guy was calling farmers about getting them to sell their land so that a builder could then, or a developer could get it, develop the land and build houses. So this agent would call up, and if he got an answering machine or voicemail, he would leave a message that just said, hi, and this is how most agents do it. Hi, this is Russ with Century 21. I was calling to see if you were interested in selling your farm. If you are, please give me a call back, 801-556-4441. Thanks, talk to you later. Hope you're having a great day. See ya, bye. Hang up. So this Thomas Freeze says to the agent, how many people call you back? Now, what would you guys guess? How many people are going to call back from that type of a message?
Well, probably none, but maybe that one that really
Yeah, none.
helped,
You're right.
you know?
There's always going to be an exception, but basically none, right? So what he said instead is he said, okay, let's keep calling. And the next one you get that is a voice message, let me leave the message. And the agent said, okay. So they're calling and they get to this one and the answering machine or voicemail picks up and this Thomas Fries says, hello, whatever the guy's name was. This is Thomas, and I am holding a copy of your tax records in my hands, and I need to talk to you as soon as possible. You can give me a call back at 801-556-4441. Click. All right. What do you think the likelihood of getting a phone call back from that message is?
Curiosity of what exactly would make them call back.
That's right. See, that's the whole thing of this is the next thing that has to happen in your prospecting is first we've got to be focused on setting an appointment. Then the next thing that we got to do is we got to get that connection or rapport built. We do that through asking questions and repeating and affirming and using empathy. If I were you, I'd feel that way too. Hey, you're on the right track. You're doing all, validate the people. As long as you validate them, you're going to create that connection and rapport. Once we've created the connection and rapport, now gives us the chance to create value or make them curious. Because in that message, like if I got a voice message from somebody that said, well, actually, let me tell you a quick story of I called back a scammer just this week because of the message that they left me. And I'll tell you why I fell for it here in just a second. But so this week right now, and you guys may or may not know this, probably do, but it's Prime Week this week, right? With Amazon. So Amazon's got all these great deals on their website. So I had gone on, I have been looking for a new string trimmer and blower. Then I wanted to get the electric string trimmer and blower combo. And I already have the lawnmower that I bought this year, which, by the way, just in case you guys weren't aware of this or not, is in the Wasatch Front. So it may work in St. George too. I don't know if it does or not, but sounds like if you're renting, Scott, you might not care anyway. But every year, both in the summer and in the winter, Clean Air Utah does a giveaway basically of if you go turn in a gas powered lawnmower, they'll give you $300 they'll basically buy your lawnmower from you for $300. And then you can take that $300, but you have to go buy an electric lawnmower. In the winter, they do it for a snowblower. Turn in your gas-powered snowblower, you can get it. Now, they only do so many of those each year, so it's kind of a lottery kind of thing. But anyway, I got in the lottery, got the an electric lawnmower, so I bought a lawnmower. So I've been looking for the same brand for the trimmer and blower so that I could use the same battery. Well, I got an email of like, hey, here's an early sale on Amazon for these, the string trimmer and blower. So I jumped on, I looked at it and I'm like, oh, that is a pretty good deal. So I bought it. Well, the next day when Prime Week actually started, the sale on it, the next day I jumped on and I went and looked at it and I found that it actually was even cheaper the next day. So I hit return on my, the one that I had done the day before, said, never mind, I don't want that, cancel it, return it, refund my money. And then I just bought it again on Amazon. So later that day, I get a phone call from a phone number I don't recognize. They leave a message that says, we're calling about this, we're calling from the Amazon fraud department because we're concerned that something fraudulent was ordered on your account or something. And so now, again, I'm curious because I just had done a return on Amazon. So I called back the phone number and the guy answered the phone and he goes, yeah, this is Amazon fraud, which I was a little leery that it really was anyway, but I figured I'd call and see. So I call and he says, did you order a pair of AirPods off of Amazon? Well, I hadn't ordered a pair of AirPods, but at that point I knew he wasn't calling about me returning the string trimmer and blower combo. So I, that point knew it was fraud. So I said, yes, I did. And then he just hung up on me. But here's the point. His voicemail made me curious to call back. If he would have just said, this is, whatever, if I hadn't already just done something on Amazon and returned it, I probably wouldn't have called back. So you've got to, if you're going to leave a message, you got to leave something that's going to make people curious. Okay. Now, so things like, especially, so let me use kind of as the example, if you're calling for sale by owners and they don't answer the phone, if you just leave a message that's, hey, this is Russ with Century 21, I want to talk to you about getting your home sold, they're not calling you back. But if you call up a for sale by owner and use that same thing he talks about there in the book and say, but, and for me, I always say, for me, I pull up the tax records on the computer at least, so that if I'm leaving a message, I'm not lying. And I say, I have your tax records pulled up in front of me. I have some questions for you about your property. Please call me back. They're probably going to call back because as soon as you say, I've got your tax records pulled up, they're curious of, what did I advertise that's not on my tax records or whatever. Okay. So another one that I will use with especially leads or people that I'm trying to get in touch with is I will call somebody, and if I leave them a message, the message I'm going to leave is, I have a really important question for you. Give me a call back. I have a really important question. Now, they have to at least know who you are. If they don't know who you are and you say that, they're probably not calling you back. But if you've talked to them before, it's a lead and they're not responding, if you'll do that, they'll typically respond. So that's another idea of that. All right, so let me give you some ideas in terms of creating value for people. So part of what you're going to, in fact, actually, let's do it this way. So Scott, let's role play again. Only this time, take on the role as if you actually own a home right now, and let's approach it as you just bought it a few months ago, and so you're not in the market. Okay, so that's what I want you to do. And again, only set an appointment with me if I create some value for you. All right.
Yep.
You ready?
Yep.
Hey, ring.
Hello.
Hi, I'm looking for Scott.
This is.
Scott, Russ Orchard, Century 21. Hey, the purpose of my call is we just listed a home in your neighborhood. It's over on Birch and Pine. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, listed for $599,900. And hey, I just was calling to see, who do you know that would want to move into the area? Say nobody.
Well, I don't really know anybody. I just moved here like 3 months ago.
Oh, you're kidding. So, well, okay. So you don't know anybody. Thanks for taking the time to think about it. So you just moved here a few months ago. That's great. Yep. That's awesome. Well, where did you move from?
Massachusetts.
Oh, from Massachusetts to here. God, that's great. What brought you here? Now notice I'm doing this same thing. What brought you here? He's going to tell me, got a new job, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to repeat in the firm, all that stuff, right? Then I say, all right, well, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? Now, because you've just bought, tell me you have no interest in moving.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be looking to go anywhere.
Yeah, it sounds like since you just barely moved in, you probably wouldn't be too excited about moving right away. But let me ask you this. How are you using real estate to plan for your financial future?
What do you mean?
Yeah, so good. So that's, now notice, as soon as he says to me, what do you mean? What I've done now is I've just created a little bit of curiosity.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so but I'm going to still take it even a step further. Okay, so yeah, when I say that so actually let's back up in the role play. I'm going to start over again at that. So let me just ask you, how are you using real estate to plan for your financial future?
What do you mean?
Yeah, so what I meant by that is, have you looked at owning investment properties and being able to have passive income, money that just comes into you every month just because you own a property, not to mention the fact that it's going to go up in value, so you'll make money that way as well. Have you considered that?
Oh, I've never really thought of that.
Okay, yeah, and a lot of people haven't, so that's not unusual. So now notice, by me doing this, what I'm doing is this, I'm repeating back to him and affirming, hey, a lot of people, you know, I'm validating. A lot of people are right where you're at. But let me ask you, Scott, if you could get, you know, say $500 or $600 extra a month coming in, would that be a problem for you?
No, not at all.
It wouldn't be. Okay. Well, so what we ought to do then is sit down and just spend 15 or 20 minutes where I can walk you through the process of what that looks like. So our afternoons or evenings better for you?
Afternoons.
Okay. So, and then let's see. So would tomorrow at 3 or 4 be better?
3 o'clock would be good.
3 o'clock. Great. Let's do that then. Okay. Now, so what I just did is I first made him a little bit curious by saying, hey, let me ask you, how are you using real estate to plan for your financial future? And he's like, what do you mean? Well, oh yeah, sorry, I probably should explain that a little bit better. What I meant by that is, have you considered owning investment properties where you could have some positive cash flow, some extra money coming into you every month? Oh, no, not really. Yeah, not a lot of people haven't, but if there was a way you could do that, is that something you'd be interested in? They're typically going to say, well, yeah. Now they may say yes, but I don't have any money or whatever. So if he had said, yeah, but I don't really have a lot of cash, then my follow-up would have been, well, yeah, understand that you don't have a lot of cash, but if there was a way that you could do it with no money down, would you be interested? And they're
Yeah, that makes it almost hard for anybody to say no.
yeah, they're either going to say yes or no to that. Now, so now once I've done that, now I've created the value there for them. Okay, so now let me give you another idea. Let's say I'm calling it for sale by owner. When I'm calling it for sale by owner, they're getting called by tons and tons of people who are saying basically the exact same thing to them, that are calling them and tell them that they're an idiot, that they're trying to sell it on their own. They need us to help them, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So for me, let's see, let's get somebody else. Who else can participate? Who will role play with me and be a for sale by owner? Has anybody been a for sale by owner on here? Has anybody ever called a for sale by owner?
I mean, I technically was a for sale by owner, but I was also my own agent.
Okay. So, because you were an agent at the time. Well, all right. Will you be a for sale by owner for me? Play the role of that?
Sure.
Okay, so, and again, don't set an appointment with me unless you see value. Okay?
Okay.
That's Janae that's talking, right?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So, okay, so ring.
Hello?
Hi, I'm looking for the owner of the home at Birch and Pine.
This is she.
Okay, yeah, hey, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21, and I'm sure you're probably getting a ton of calls from other agents right now, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to almost feel like to you that like if you kick a bush, a realtor runs out.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like I call a lot of for sale by owners, and what I've found is sometimes they even feel like, gosh, where, you know, you guys come out of the woodwork as soon as we put our house on the market, like a bunch of vultures and stuff. Like that's got to be what it feels like to you.
Yes, I kind of expected it would be, but yeah.
Yeah. Now let me pause real quick to just make sure you guys understand. Remember where I'm at in this process is I'm trying to get some connection and rapport. And the moment that I got her to laugh by saying you kick a bush and a realtor runs out, all of a sudden that person is going to be like, all right, this agent's a little bit different than everybody else, meaning like I just made her laugh on the phone. So other agents are not doing that. So I've earned the right. That's the other thing that I will do is I a lot of times think about this connection and rapport is where I'm earning the right to then go to the next phase, which is to create value or make them curious. Okay. So, all right. So let's keep going. So, yeah, it's got to be frustrating. If I were you, I would be annoyed at like how I put it on for sale by owner and I'm getting calls from agents. Like, I don't want to talk to agents about getting my house sold. I want to talk to buyers that want to buy.
Right.
Yep. Okay, good. So, so just a quick question for you is what market are you advertising your property on?
Really just like Zillow and I don't know, that's pretty much it because those are the free KSL.
Okay.
Facebook Marketplace.
Okay, good, perfect. So now so I'm gonna back up for a second in this role play. So now what I said to her is, what market are you advertising the property on? And notice that she said to me, Zillow, Facebook Marketplace. So now what I'm gonna do is this because what's usually gonna happen is people are gonna either go, I'm not sure what you mean, in which case I know that I've got them curious now. Or they're going to respond like she did of going, oh, I put it on just a couple of websites. So now what I'm going to say then is this. Oh, yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome that you got it on Facebook Marketplace and you got it on Zillow. Awesome. That's really good. But actually what I meant by that is, what type of market are you marketing to? Meaning, are you trying to get it sold to an FHA, a VA, a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Big Mac? Like, what are you doing that way?
Really anybody that can buy my house, I'll take it.
Okay, so, but are you aware of the differences in those different loan types and how that's going to affect buyers?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so now.
I mean, yes, I am, but
Yeah.
yes, okay.
For the role play, you're good. So
Okay.
ultimately though, most of them are going to be kind of, even if they think they are, they're going to start to question of like, well, I thought maybe I did, or I'm not sure if I do, or whatever. And so then I'm going to now go to this next level of this. Okay. So then I'm going to say, okay, well, and what I mean by that is, have you considered, Janae, how you could use points as a way to leverage the offers that come in?
What do you mean by points?
Okay, so see what I just happened right there? All of a sudden she's curious. And so probably what I'm going to do at this point is that now I'm going to go to then trying to set the appointment because I've now made her curious. Okay. Okay. So I say, I'm going to back up and say it again. So have you considered how you might use points as a way to leverage the offers that come in so that you can net more money?
What do you mean by points?
Oh, and actually I just realized I forgot one question I usually ask first. So let's back up even from that. Okay. So forget that I said the points thing yet. Okay, so let's back. So do you mind me just asking why you decided to sell your home for sale by owner rather than use an agent?
Mainly just so I can keep all the equity I have.
Okay, good. So now watch this part here, guys. What she just said to me is, I want to keep my equity, right? Or they're going to say, I want to make more money. They're going to say, or sorry, they're not going to say make more money. They're going to either say save the commission, or they're saying keep the equity. Okay, they're going to always say, I wanted to save the commission. So my response to that usually is, so I want to do what's called a level shift. I'm going to shift her from focusing on the commission or saving her equity into making more money. Okay, so watch this. Okay, so why did you decide to sell it on your own rather than list with an agent?
Just so I could keep the equity.
Okay, so you want to make sure you're keeping as much money. So really what I hear you saying is, at the end of the day, you want to walk away from the sale of your home with as much money as you can, right?
Yes, that would be great.
And if I were you, I would want to do that exact same thing too. So, but if there was a way where actually using an agent, you could make more money, would you be willing to do it?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Okay, well, that's the very reason that you and I, now tell me no to this, but that's the very reason that you and I need to get together, is so that I can walk you through and show you how the things that I do to market the home actually will make up for more than the commission that you're going to pay me. So what works better, afternoon or evening? Tell me no.
I don't know. I'm pretty busy.
You're pretty busy. Okay, so now here's the key thing, guys. Make sure you understand this. If I had created the value and made her curious enough, she's going to set the appointment. If she does not set the appointment with me, the reason she's not setting the appointment is because she doesn't see the value or she's not curious. It's one of the two. So what that tells me is I got to step it up a little. So then that's when she had said no to that, then I would say, well, so have you considered how using, because you just said you wanted to make as much money from the sale as your home as possible, right?
Right.
So have you considered how using points could leverage an offer into making you even more money?
What do you mean by points?
See, boom, now that's how I'd say, well, that's the very reason, Janae, that you and I should get together and just spend 15 or 20 minutes so I can walk you through a strategy that will net you more money when you get an offer from a buyer potentially. So what works better, afternoon or evening?
Evenings.
Okay, good. So now notice, all I'm doing is once I've gotten that connection and rapport is I'm going to, the conversation is all designed around either making them curious or creating value. Make them curious, create value. Make them curious or create value. And once you've created enough value or made them curious, they'll set the appointment. And so that's why I would then go to, well, how are you using points as a way to, or have you considered using points as a way to leverage an offer? And then they're going to go, I don't know. I mean, do you guys know what I'm even talking about? And it's okay.
Well, do you mean like, no, I don't, because I was gonna say, I mean, points, when I hear points, I think of like buying points on a interest rate.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So how would a seller use that as a way to leverage an offer from a buyer?
You could buy points down for the buyer.
Okay, but
Could
remember,
a seller do that?
they could for sure. But remember, I'm saying that the seller would use it as a way to net more money, not spend more money. Because what you're
I know
saying
that's-
right on is the seller could do that, absolutely. But they're not going to walk away with more money by doing it. So I've never had anybody in a class ever say, yes, I know what it is. So it's okay for the rest of you guys to say, do you guys want to know? That's probably the better question.
Yes, I would love to know.
Okay, now I want to be really, really clear though, that you're probably not going to do it. Especially with what's gone on with interest rates right now, you're probably not going to be doing this. But remember, I'm using it as a strategy to just show there's value in me as an agent that you should consider. Because remember, with a for sale by owner, they're thinking they want to save the commission. Now, I'm actually going to show you guys, we're going to talk for sale by owners more on Tuesday. And I've got a chart that I'm going to show you guys that shows you, but by using an agent, and this is empirical data, like this is real data that shows they'll make more money. But just so you guys understand how this point leveraging thing works, it looks like this. And we're getting to, we are transitioning to a market where we're going to start seeing buyers coming in and asking sellers to pay their closing costs again. And so when a buyer comes to the seller and says, will you pay $5,000 towards my closing costs? What you can do now, again, I want to be really, really clear, like the right scenario has to be in place for you to want to do this. Okay. So it's not going to be something that's going to just happen all the time and that you're going to use consistently. Like the scenario would have to be perfect for it to come about. But what are interest rates at today? And I don't need an exact answer, but ballpark me.
About 5%, 5.2.
Okay, so let's just say that it's 5.5. Okay. That what you do then is if this is how I would, when I show up to the for sale by owner, Janae, when I show up to you, this is what I would be saying to you as far as like, here's what you want to do as, and I'm going to present it as here's what you want to do as a for sale by owner, not as a, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm telling them this is, let's say the interest rates are 5.5%. What you're going to do then is this is what I'd be saying to the for sale by owner. When an offer comes in and they want you to pay, say, $5,000 in their closing costs, what you're going to do is you're going to go back to the lender and say, instead of charging this buyer 5%, charge them 6%. Now, what happens is by them charging a higher interest rate. Now, remember, like, I know some of you might be going, well, nobody's going to do this, but it doesn't mean you can't. And there are times and scenarios that this will work. But I use this as a way to create value, to just show I know more than you do. I don't say it that way, but that's what I'm trying to get them to see, is there's value in using me as an agent. So we're going to have the lender charge them 6% interest instead of 5.5. And then what happens is the lender makes money on this gap right here. And then so then instead of the seller paying the closing costs for the buyer, well, you get the lender to use the money they get by charging a higher interest rate to pay their closing costs. Now, sometimes people will go say, well, why would a buyer ever do that? And why would a loan officer do that? Well, it would be, it's a way for them, especially actually this last, when interest rates were still down around 3, and people were being hyper competitive on getting a house, this would have worked really, really well as a way to take all the cash that the buyer has to pay above list price, get the lender to charge them a higher interest rate so that the lender then gets the money and pays the closing costs for the buyer. Then what happens is 6 months later, the buyer goes and refinances, gets the lower back interest rate. So it's going to cost them a higher mortgage payment for about 6 months. Now, again, I want to be very, very, very clear. It's going to be very rare scenario that you're actually going to do this, but I'm just sharing it with you as a way of showing a way to create value or to make the people curious to want to meet with you, is by you asking those type of questions. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? I'll take silence as a no.
Yeah, that's enough for me.
Okay, sweet. All right, so then the last piece of this. The next thing that has to happen, which you guys have already seen me do, is number 4 is you have to close. Now, there are only 5 ways in the English language that you can ask for an appointment. And they are, in fact, let me change the color here. Just what time, which time, how soon, when, and where. So those are the only 5 ways in the English language that you can ask for an appointment. What time, which time, how soon, when, and where. Now, a lot of times what will happen is people will say, can we get together? Now, if I say to somebody, can we get together? Is that asking for an appointment? The answer is no, by the way. What is, so this one I'll let you guys answer this. If I ask somebody, look literally at the question. Look at the question as literal. What are you asking when you ask somebody, can we get together?
I mean, are they capable of
Yeah,
getting together?
right. That's what we're asking, right? So now answer that question for me. Is it capable? Are they capable of getting together?
Most likely, yes.
Yes. So what's really the only question?
Are they willing or do they want to?
When?
Yeah, it's when.
When?
The question really is just when, because they're capable of doing it. So we don't ever need to ask anybody, can we get together? Because the truth is they can. The question isn't if they can, the question is, do they see the value in it? And if they see the value, then the only question is, well, when should we get together, right? So don't ever say to anybody, can we get together? You have to start it with either what time, which time, how soon, when, or where, okay? All right, how about this one? Would you like to get together? Is that asking for an appointment?
I mean, my answer will most of the time be no.
Yeah, that's right. The answer is no, because and does it matter if they would like to or not? Because when you ask, would you like to, you're asking them if they would like it. And I don't like to go to the dentist, but I still go get my teeth cleaned. Like, I don't like to go do some of the things that I don't like to go meet with the doctor, but I go do it to get a checkup. Like, it doesn't matter if they like it or not. It's just, when are we going to do it? All right. How about this one? This one's the worst one. In fact, I'll just ask, and everybody that can answer this question. Why don't you give me some money?
I don't want to.
Okay.
You're not my child.
Not your child, okay. What about the rest of you? Why don't you give me some money?
Why would I?
Yeah,
Ooh, that's a good one.
All
Get
right,
your own money.
how much money did I get just now?
None.
None.
Guess what happens if you say to somebody, why don't we get together?
Because I don't want to.
Yeah.
Why would you?
But you say to somebody, why don't we get together? What's going to happen is they're going to just tell you the reason you're not going to get together. See,
Yeah.
when I asked you guys, why don't you give me money? You all told me the reason you weren't going to give me money. I didn't
Right.
give any money. Same thing happens if you say to somebody, hey, why don't we get together and talk more about it? They're probably going to tell you the reason you're not going to get together because I don't want to. Whatever, like, I don't trust you. Like, they may not say I don't trust you, but they're not going to tell you the truth, which is, they're not going to set an appointment. All right. So the only ways you can ask for an appointment is what time, which time, how soon, when, or where. Now, what you guys have heard me saying is a version of this, the which time. Because you'll notice what I said to you guys is what works better, afternoon or evening. That's just another version of which time. What works better, afternoons or evening? I'm giving you two different options. People like choices and people like to be able to be given an option. So I like using, hey, so what works best, afternoon or evening? And then usually they're going to answer your question by either saying afternoons or evenings. Okay, so that's how I like to do it. The other way that I will do it though is when, I'll use the, hey, when could we get together and talk more about that or whatever. So just kind of recognize when you're asking for an appointment, you've got to do it as a what time, which time, how soon, when, or where. All right. What questions do you guys have? Helpful information?
Very much.
Yes, very. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, super helpful.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna stop for today then, right here. So what we'll do on Tuesday is I'm gonna go through another level of kind of, here's some other things you need to keep in mind. Like, we're gonna go through and talk about the primary objective, which is set an appointment, and the secondary objective. And then we're gonna run through another thing that I call the buyer cycle. So I'm gonna talk to you guys about the buyer cycle. And then once we've done that, then we're gonna go through and talk about, okay, so how do we make this apply into our different various versions of ways we can generate leads, if that makes sense. So that's what it'll look like for Tuesday. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for being here, guys. Make sure if you did not put your name in the chat box that you do, so that I have a record of it. And then I'll talk to you guys on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I